Hello and welcome to The Road To. We have an exciting program for you today, so make sure you have your drinks and your munchies with you because you're not going to leave. I'd like to introduce our illustrious panel and guests, starting with James Parmalee. James, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I run the Northern Virginia Republican PAC and Republican United for Tax Relief, and I also host a show on this station.
All right, good. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
And next, John Flannery.
Hi, good to be here again with my alter ego, James, and to talk about still another set of elections. That's Virginia, so we have an election all the time. I'm a former federal prosecutor, and I represent the abused and misunderstood in private practice, and I try to be as active and as helpful as I can in campaigns and writing editorials and appearing on shows like this. So this is the year the Democrats clean up the General Assembly, and we have a couple of guests who may address that issue.
Yes, we do. And I'd like to introduce one of our great candidates, Hung Nguyen, running for the General Assembly, Virginia General Assembly from the 67th District.
Correct. Well, good morning, and thank you for having me here, Marlene, and your co-host.
Good to have you.
I'm running, Hung Nguyen. I'm Vietnamese American. I live in Fairfax, and I'm running for House of Delegates. And I'm excited to be here and kind of jump into action with you guys.
We're excited. And last but not least, Richard Caballos.
Yes.
Running for Virginia General Assembly from the 50th House District.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. My name is Richard Caballos. I'm running for the 50th House of Delegates seat, which represents Manassas City and parts of Prince William County. I'm very excited to be here.
Yes, and we're excited to have you.
Thank you.
And we're going to start right off, do a little something different today. We're going to start right off talking to our delegate candidates so that they have ample time to tell us about themselves and their issues without our wonderful panelists kind of hogging the show here. So,
Jim and I would never do that.
We'll start with you. Where is the 67th House District?
The 67th District starts around Route 50, just past Fair Oaks Mall, west towards Loudoun into South Riding. South, roughly along 28, kind of cuts through half of the district. 66 is the southern border. On the northern border is roughly Ox Road and 7100, so it kind of gets funky there. So we primarily cover western Fairfax, Chantilly, northern part of Centerville, part of the western part of Oakton and Vienna, and just the southern part of Herndon.
So it kind of jigs around a little
Kind of
bit
jigs
there.
around, follows around.
And I didn't realize that you were so close to my home in Loudoun County.
Well, hopefully I can count on your vote.
Well, I'm not going to be able to vote for you. I don't think we're that close.
Okay.
Pretty close. I wish I could. So tell us a little bit about the demographics there.
Well, the district's pretty diverse. There's about 21% Asian American population, about 5% African American community, and about roughly 10% Hispanic. So we're roughly about 35%-ish minority population, and that breaks down even further. About 1,600 Korean Americans. We have about 3 large churches. A couple of them are in our district. A couple of them are just out there. The Korean Presbyterian Church is just south of our border, but it's the largest Korean church in the entire East Coast. So tons of folks go there. And then you also have about 1,100 South Asians, another 960 Pakistanis, which I never knew in the district. But as I've running for the office now, I'm beginning to meet a lot of these folks. And so it's pretty diverse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like it is, and it sounds like you've got a handle on exactly the different ethnicities that live there. Correct. A lot of different languages being spoken.
Yeah, and it's very nice because I'm Vietnamese American, my wife is Korean American, and I speak Spanish fluently.
Oh, wow.
And so
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I've been involved with the community for a very long time, both on a national and state level. So, I was also the former chair of the Asian Advisory Board to Governor Warner and Governor Kane. And so, as part of that, having worked with the legislature before of creating a report, an annual report of what is the state of Asian Americans in the Commonwealth of Virginia, you get to know some of the subject areas.
Yeah, I imagine you do. And Richard, what about you? Where's the 50th?
Well, the 50th District is primarily Manassas City and parts of Prince William County, which include Bristow and Gainesville.
Okay, and what about the demographics there? Is it pretty similar?
Yeah, the
or-
demographics are very diverse. We have a very sizable Latino population, a very sizable African American population, and a very young professional voters in my district, and we're excited to get them out to come out to vote this year. My district last year went 10 points Democratic for our president and senator, and we're excited. It's a winnable race.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And your district is a little more. It isn't all like.
Oh well, no.
It's more centralized.
It's more
than,
centralized. Manassas City, that's the most centralized part of the district. But then it is gerrymandered a lot into Prince William County. But Bristow is a very professional. Middle-class neighborhood, very nice community. We have Gainesville, so we're including a lot of diversity in our district, so we're really excited about it.
What about the issues? What are some of the issues of the voters that live there? Would you say the main issues? I know there's a real controversy going on right now.
Yeah, well, talking to voters, there's three main issues that are happening in my district. They want to see investment in education. They want to make sure that transportation is dealt with. We had a bipartisan bill this year, Republican and Democratic bipartisan bill, where our Republican governor signed on the bill. It was a good step in the right direction, and my opponent voted against it. And
You're talking about the transportation.
Yeah, transportation bill. Yes.
Transportation tax hike.
I think we already started on the debate already. I jumped
Wait, signed by a Republican governor.
I'll give you equal opportunity on hammering.
I know. I was taking advantage of it.
He's for the governor being indicted, just not Coochie.
No,
you don't? Okay.
And then finally, bringing jobs into Virginia, and especially our district, we need to be more inclusive and open to new employees and new employers. And definitely, when we have business, we want employers to make sure that their employees are treated fairly. So those are the type of things my district is talking about, and working with the voters that's what they want to see.
Right. Okay. And what about you, Hung? What are some of the issues in the 60s?
Well, definitely a couple of issues resonate with my district. Is also education, because we have a lot of young professionals in my district who have young kids, and so they care about pre-education, K-12 education. And also some of them have older kids who are going to college, and they're concerned about why can't I get into UVA or some of these other schools, especially since I grew up here and I live here. So those are, education, very important. And definitely transportation, because there's a lot of construction that's going on. We have 28 and Route 50 and Stringfellow in our district. And 66 is on the southern border, so 66, 20. So there's all this conversation about traffic and congestion. But a lot of folks, I've heard as we're walking around along Route 50, just past 28, there's a Costco. Everybody in the afternoon hits that traffic, and it doesn't make sense why we're sitting in traffic 30, 40 minutes to go to Costco, or even just to go to eat pho, which is a Vietnamese noodle soup. But even for the folks leaving Fairfax County to head into Loudoun County, all of a sudden there's this construction, and people are wondering, when is this thing going to get fixed?
Yeah.
So I appreciate the transportation bill. I appreciate new money, but if that's not, fixing the problem by getting congestion down and fixing the road faster, what's the point,
Well, let me jump in. I mean, the transportation tax hike, unfortunately, is not going to solve transportation, because the money's directed in large part to areas that will end up leading to more congestion. Because it's not really a transportation bill; it was a special interest bill. But let me ask you this separate.
30
let me
years,
ask you
though.
this.
30 years.
Wait, when you make a statement like that,
I was going to go into another transportation issue.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that.
Well, I actually am going to get to that. The East-West.
I was going to ask about the Bi-County Parkway.
Well, that's what I was
there we
gonna
go.
ask.
Okay.
Thank you
I
very
did not.
much.
Great
And
minds
this,
think alike.
and this is partisanship here. This is
There it is.
Democrat and
There we go.
Republican
It is about
party.
unity.
I want to get back to that
there you go.
aspect, the East-West Bi-County Parkway through bypass, whatever they're calling it these days, but and that's a big issue.
Yeah,
for
I mean,
your
well,
district.
on parts of my district, I mean, it's very important in Bristol and Gainesville, but there still needs to be a lot more research and see what exactly, how is it going to affect the rest of my district. I mean, right now, we talk about traffic, we have Route 28 on my side, and then Studley Road on the other side, 234. Thing is, a simple issue. I mean, people just want to get home. They want to. They want to sit down and have a dinner with their family, or they want to go take their kids to a ball game. And the first time in 30 years that we had a bipartisan bill that helped, that was going to solve some type of problem. I mean, in the long run, that's what it was going to do. But my opponent decided to vote against it. And these are just common sense issues that we need to look at. And you mentioned it's a tax hike, but what it is a long-term thing to try to figure this
But
out.
what would you, the problem is the projects, they're building projects on the that have more lobbying, they're building projects that, like, okay, an example would be, 10 years ago when they had the transportation referendum. It turned out that at the last minute, people found out that the money was going to be spent farther out, which was going to create a funnel effect with more cars going into the already crowded roads. So they weren't actually widening the roads that were crowded. They were building more roads to areas that didn't have housing, so they could have housing that would funnel more cars into the already congested roads. So I would suggest that the transportation tax hike that was passed will make it harder to get to Costco. It will make it harder to get through your district, and it will, this Bi-Party County Parkway thing, which the residents all around the area don't want. They're going to actually close other roads.
Too general.
No, but there's a huge protest about it. They want to put this road in and then close other roads. So I'm not sure you'd actually. I mean, you.
So you'd be for a transportation bill, just different roads.
I would think that there are things that one can do. There are things that one could do to relieve congestion.
I think
this is a huge tax increase with by the way, a state that's been running a surplus the last couple of years. So we keep running a surplus, but we need to raise taxes to do one of the core functions of government.
Well, let me throw this out too. Transportation, although I speak specifically of Costco and Route 1520
I
as
live
an example.
nearby, so
you understand.
Yeah.
So you understand, and so my conversation is very simple. How long is it going to take for the traffic to be reduced? How long is that project going to take? Why can't, because part of the conversation you asked me too is what are some of the other issues? And creating jobs is a very big issue in our community.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of land out there to create businesses because there's a lot of buildings coming up, a lot of three-letter agencies are out there, and there's a lot of government contracting. But there's no point of creating more business when people get frustrated and stuck in traffic, because by the time they show up to the office, they're already in a bad mood. By the time 3 o'clock shows up, everybody wants to go home, and so people are not being productive. And so companies suffer, and as my colleague Richard says, families want to go to the ballpark, to go to churches and things like that. And when you're stuck, it's very difficult. And so my question, very simple, is when is this construction going to get done? And meanwhile, my candidate, Jim Lemunyan, and the incumbent, he's talking about he helped bring this money up here, and we're going to have all these other road work. Well, my question is, why start other road projects when we haven't even finished with one yet? Pretty soon, all the roads are going to be clogged up.
Right.
So let's finish one project as we start another before we start another one. I mean, I'm coming from a very simple perspective. Otherwise, you start all these. Next thing, everybody might as well just stay home. You can't get anywhere.
Well, and staying home is an option too. I mean, what happened to telecommuting? We have all of this technology. Governor Warner had a big initiative when I'm going back a while, but to put fiber optic in everywhere. Why not have more telecommuting? Why do we have to have so much micromanaging? I think employees are going to be very productive.
Well, I mean, on that point, my area again, because there's so much government and we have a great airport, we have some good roads, and we have a lot of smart young professionals. Telecommuting is one of those things. Maryland right now is talking about it becoming the cyber capital of the world. Huntsville, Alabama is making itself the cyber city of the U.S. What is this area known for? What are we known for, even regionally? So that way, this is not just about my district, but it's a regional solution. What are we known for? Are we the center of excellence for knowledge management? Are we the center of excellence for what? So
well, we were, but I believe you're right that our governor, and the people around him don't believe in education.
Right.
The first principle that both of you mentioned.
That's one huge thing.
We're not going to be in the game of innovation and productivity competing with the world if we're not producing our own. And people who are against immigration, we're just going to have to be issuing more H-1B visas because we can't produce our own people, and we refuse to educate them the right way.
And investing.
Cuccinelli is compromising Thomas Jefferson.
Who's not educating them the right way?
We in Virginia are voting against. No, it's not the teachers.
Are you saying that teachers
when you have to
aren't
use the
doing a
same
good job?
textbooks, when you have to use the same textbooks, and you don't provide the buildings, and you don't give the incentives for people to be
You have
teachers
to
and
use the
remain
same-
teachers,
and then-
you scare them out of the
No.
community,
Is that what-
then
is that what's
then
happening?
that is exactly what's happening.
And then they're voting, and then
Textbooks.
And then in
and-
Congress, they're
Yeah.
voting against them getting
Textbooks
loans to
in
get further
schools are
education.
at- The average
That's a
age of
cost.
textbooks in
Not-
schools are 10 years old.
Yeah.
Science,
First of all-
including science.
No,
Science books. You know how far science has come in 10 years?
Well, here's the problem. Since the students need to start with the basics of science and work their way up, and since tests have shown that that's not getting through, then I would be more concerned with learning the basics before learning
they do
what
learn
happened
the
the last
basics.
few years.
Learn the
That's
basics.
the problem. The
In
basic
grade
is part
They're
of
not
STEM.
learning the
But-
basics.
but
That's
that's-
Well, yeah, but do they
So
have
we
the
have
tools?
stupid kids, is that what you're saying?
They need the tools,
Here's the
though. They
problem.
need the
When
tools
kids
for it, though.
aren't- When kids aren't learning the basics, we have to ask the question, what is going on?
Okay, but then how do
So
we
the
get to
question
those
is,
basics?
and-
How do we get to those
and-
basics?
38 people in a classroom, 50 people in a classroom.
Education dollars are being directed to the bureaucracy, not
Oh, no,
to
they're
the
not.
classroom. And if we would
My
spend more
opponent
time
has voted
focusing on the
time
classroom,
and time again-
not the bureaucracy, we'd be in better shape.
$620 million out of the public school system. That could have killed teachers' jobs, investment in the community. And we're talking about you want the tools, you want the basics. How about starting at an early age where it's shown that kids who have early childhood education can get through school, elementary school, and also they have the better advantage to get into college. But you say basics from what age, though? We have to start early. And
So we have to use the same flawed policies that are
How is
harming our
that flawed?
education system
That's
now.
not
And
flawed.
How's
doing
that
it earlier.
flawed?
Here's an
Head
idea.
Start
Here's an
has
idea.
worked.
Why don't we figure out what we're doing wrong now, fix that, and then we can look at expanding. You don't, like you were saying
And you
with the,
take
like you were saying with the
No,
road
no, no,
program,
you
like
vote-
you were saying
they
with the road
vote on
program,
millions
you
of
don't
dollars
expand
every
until
year.
you know what you're doing.
Well, let me ask you
Okay, and in the
this.
meantime, all these
Because-
kids live in the short run and they're not getting an education
Okay.
because you
Then I think it's
say
important-
the
is it-
way.
Hold on,
We had that with-
it's
we had that
important-
with discrimination in
The legislature
1954
last year
or
passed a
deliberate
law.
speed.
It becomes
All
more
deliberate
important
speed.
to fix our problems now.
But the legislature passed a law last year for
the
some new educational institution to be in place, so that way schools that are not accredited now all of a sudden is going to get a letter grading. So one, I thought we had a budget problem.
Yes.
So why are we creating another agency or another group of people, which means you have to hire folks, because somebody has to go around grading these schools, and then
So
they're
you
gonna-
don't want to grade any
No, I'm
schools?
just saying, wait, and if you're going to take over those
Give any
schools,
tests?
well, no, if you're going to take over those schools, who's going to take over those schools and run those schools? Richmond? I mean, apparently they're supposed to be busy.
Didn't you get out of
So-
school, Jim, on pass fail?
I didn't. I was, in school, I seem to remember they gave me tests, they gave me letter grades.
you pass
So
them?
I'm not opposed.
Nobody's saying-
I'm not talking about
to
opposing
grading
tests. I'm
schools.
talking about a bureaucracy being set up to grade the schools, not the students, but grading the schools.
You
And
don't
we
have
have
to
a-
say
On the
you have
basis
and we also
of
have
standardized
bureaucracy.
tests.
We have a system that's
Well, the
Marlene
legislature
said
passed
it
this
right.
law last
But you
year.
don't have to create a new one, do you?
But they passed the law last year, so my question is why?
Well,
Let me tell you,
the reason is to grade a school is unsatisfactory,
Right,
so we can
exactly.
compromise all public school,
Yeah.
and then have
Or-
charter schools that will segregate all
You
sorts of
sound
people.
like a kid
Right.
trying to explain to the
And let-
parent why they got a D.
and
Well,
let
the teacher,
Richard-
the teacher was against
they're
me.
getting
The students
Ds.
were against
Okay.
me.
You know,
blah, blah, blah.
The
Richard,
system
Richard.
is against our
Richard.
children, and it's therefore against the nation.
It
And
is.
that is a crime.
Look,
And that is what's
Then
wrong
we
with our
need-
current
then we
leadership.
need
Let's
to
fix
test
it. You were
the
gonna
kids,
make a point
figure
about
out what
where
they're
you
not
work.
learning,
Yeah,
and
where-
try to fix
Okay,
the system.
guys.
They're not learning everything
They're not.
because we don't
Exactly.
give them the
Yeah.
resources.
What they're not learning. They're not. What
We
kids
talk-
are learning
and
now.
that-
They're
and
learning
then we
to
don't wanna
attend.
talk
All of it.
Teachers.
We don't wanna
You know,
Look,
I have to say,
we
let
can't
me
have
jump
I
in.
work with kids
I
on a
think
daily basis. I work with kids on a daily
Listen.
basis. I'm a director of a community center. I see kids from first grade to 12th grade come in, and they don't know how to read a clock. The handout. You know why? Because it's all digital.
Right.
Great. But one thing, you know what they do? They struggle with every month. Close to the end of the year, is they're studying from the day they get to school in September all the way to the end of June for a test.
Yes.
They study
Then
to a
you
test.
would think they do better on
No,
those
because
tests.
how are you gonna help
Obviously they're
kids?
not.
Yes, they don't. Why is that?
well,
and I'm saying
no.
Where's the
as a
education in
group.
that?
Where's the
Where-
education
where-
exactly?
Yes.
What we
Yeah,
need
I'm
to
on
be
multiple-
teaching
what are we
are
paying for?
problem
So how about we get rid
solving.
of these tests?
Critical
Wait,
thinking.
wait.
Listen
How
to
about we
me.
get rid of these
Teachers
tests?
assisting to a
How
test.
much time have you spent in a classroom
so you-
lately? How much
so
time have
you-
you
so
spent in
you-
a classroom lately? Answer my question.
Sometimes I go into schools
How,
to speak on behalf of just like
Oh.
probably you guys do
Okay.
on the political groups. But
I-
here's the thing, my
listen
question,
to
did
me.
you tell me
the
what's
children?
going wrong then?
Well, that's
What's going wrong is what we're telling you. Kids are studying
To a
from
test.
day one.
So the problem
for a
is the
standardized
diagnostic
test.
test, not the underlying
It's
problem.
not a diagnostic
it's
not a
test.
even a
diagnostic
bigger
test.
problem.
It doesn't
Diagnostic
teach you how to
test.
think
Correct.
Okay.
It teaches you how to
If you have a
memorize.
test
Yeah.
and the kids can't do, and a significant number of kids can't do basic math, is the test the problem?
No, we're
or
talking about
is
the
something
basics.
else the
But
problem?
you,
You know what?
but you
I
mentioned
think the
basics from the
test is
beginning.
we
problem.
teach them the math.
It is.
You,
We
you
should
mentioned
teach them
basics
the math,
about. You
but we're not
mentioned
teaching them
basics.
We
math.
don't want to test them.
No,
darn it,
hold on,
'cause
no.
we'll
You
find
meant
out they
no,
didn't learn
hold,
it.
you,
No,
now
no,
let me
no,
finish.
no.
When you mentioned basics, they needed to learn the basics. But how do you get to the basics? You need to invest in education, not take
Hold
money
it.
away from
You
education.
don't need.
And that's what
we
happens
spend
all
a
the time.
lot of money per
right.
student for, and they should. The
But it doesn't
students
mean it's
should
being
be doing
effectively
better.
used.
It's not being
Well, that's my
That's
point
right.
about the
Ex-
bureaucracy. So you don't need necessarily more money at
bureaucracy
this
of
point. You need to
lobbyists.
spend the money in the right areas.
Yeah, so take out the
I
testing
don't know.
bureaucracy.
It's amazing. I don't think we're disagreeing about that.
Spend that money on textbooks,
Let's
When I
get
on
was a
teachers.
kid-
teachers.
When I was a
on
kid, I didn't want to
technology,
take tests
laptops.
either, but you have
Okay.
to take tests.
Take it.
Guys,
No, nobody's
I
against
actually
taking
enjoy
tests.
taking
Nobody is
tests.
against taking tests, but tests to measure how you're progressing is good. However, just studying to take a test, I think, is bad. I don't think we all grew up in that environment.
No.
We grew up in a place where we learn how to do our basic mathematics. 12 times 12 is what? And then we get tested on that just to make sure by rote memory. So it's worked for a few centuries,
So let's do that. Yes, but why is that? Why are they not learning these things now?
They are learning them. Okay,
test-
so
the test show differently.
we have just a few minutes left. I want our guests
Education, not that.
to talk a little bit. They've mentioned a few things about differences between themselves and their opponents, but Hung, tell me some what distinguishes you between your opponent and yourself.
I'm a practical kind of guy. I've been meeting with folks in the community, and I am willing to handle and fight for education. And one of the things I'm looking at specifically is STEM, because STEM is not about just college. STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, is about the basics, as we're talking about the basic mathematics, the foundation. So that way we're teaching children how to think critically, how to analyze, and so let's focus our energy in that. My opponent has been pushing for charter schools, vouchers, for a whole entire organization to take over schools, which again, if the schools aren't doing well, let's figure out why, versus let's create a whole entire bureaucracy. For one, I
Is
thought
competition bad?
Oh, come on.
competition's not bad, but
competition.
but I thought part of it was less government, smaller government, more efficient and
More
productive.
competition.
Yeah, more competition's fine, but you don't create another bureaucracy just to create another bureaucracy. Let's take a look
What's
at
wrong with
really
charter
works.
schools?
I'm not even going to go, because charter schools, what's wrong with public schools? Charter schools are
Nothing.
being
You
funded.
can have both.
Charter schools are being funded by the same organizations that are being funded, for public schools. It's different than being
You
a
lose
private school.
control over the charter
Yeah,
school.
correct.
You also
government control is very important.
No, it's not government control.
they set up quote nonprofits, and then they set up a whole set of vendors that they control, and so tax dollars end
Correct.
up underwriting somebody else's business plan, and therefore less efficiently, when we could put the same money into public schools and have a multiplying effect that we don't have.
And
government
also
control.
dilute.
No, let me throw something else.
Public schools, the reason we have public schools is because there was discrimination in
Okay.
this country by way of education. Public schools is the cure for a past bad practice,
you
and
can
charter
have a
schools
long
returns that practice.
All right.
We're out of time.
I agree with you.
John's running out.
Well,
Finally,
actually, we have
opponent.
a couple of minutes
Yeah.
for Richard, so tell us about what differentiate.
I know with the
differentiate from
short amount of time we have, and you mentioned government control, right? One stark difference between me and my opponent, and you talk about government control, is that I believe that government shouldn't be in the business of telling a woman what she can or cannot do with her body, and that's one main opponent. That's
Amen.
one. Thank you.
your All right, go on.
Also,
Should taxpayer funding go toward abortion?
Yes, I think so.
Guys, hold on.
Absolutely, it's a healthcare issue.
So another.
It'll be like Elysium if we're not careful.
You guys
Oh,
have
is that
time
good?
out
I
right
think that's
now.
good. I gotta go
just
see
saw
that.
it Friday night.
So one other last thing. We talked about education. I'm gonna beat it until people understand. When you take $620 million out of public education and you vote on that, you're definitely out of touch with the district about teachers and schools. I'll do something differently. That's something me and my opponent do differ on a lot.
Okay, thank you. Great. I
Exciting
wish
pair
I
of
could
candidates.
vote for
Glad
both
you're
of
here.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Jack.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And you know what,
Nice to
along
meet
with
you too. Thank
government
you.
control,
Thank you.
now it's not even just what a woman can do.
Thank you, hon. That's great.
It's what a couple can do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's what a couple can do. I mean, we're even taking it that far. We're in your bedroom. Let's put cameras in there.
Less government unless you don't fit our view of what your liberty should be. In which case, we'll constrain it.
Perhaps you can send a drone.
And just one little segue into religion, and I'm not, trying to make a connection there, although there may be one.
Is there a God?
Is that it? Yeah. E.W. Jackson recently said that the Democratic Party is the anti-God party, and all Christians should disassociate themselves with that party, which would be wonderful for Mr. Jackson, Reverend Jackson's party, if that were.
I quote the New Testament.
Bishop.
Judge not, lest ye be judged.
Right.
True.
Quote the New Testament.
I'm very
Voters
tired
hate
of
that.
both
Voters hate-
parties sometimes.
voters hate that rhetoric.
I'm running as a Democrat, but I'm very tired of both parties making heated statements like this. All Christians should be Republicans. Well, you know what? All Christians should be very nice to one another and not throw things out there
Yes,
to be divisional.
and all Christians perhaps should respect Judaism
Correct.
or
Yeah.
all the religions through the Far East and all the people that make up our diverse community and just practice what they preach when they say we should have liberty
Exactly.
politically.
Right.
And people who claim to be religious and excise the Sermon on the Mount from all public practice are not Christians at all.
We need
And
to
that is
coexist.
where he is when he's telling us how he would cut all these services and things for individuals. He's not respecting the religion he purports to
Correct.
represent.
You have to practice what you're preaching.
And,
Well, I
and
think
plus
he
that he's a
does.
statewide candidate.
I don't think so at all.
That he's a statewide candidate is very disappointing. So that's,
Well,
and we need
But
voters
you would
don't like
think-
that.
You guys
Voters don't
think
like
that
that.
of all the Republicans.
No, I would not.
no,
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 I
no,
would
no.
not.
All right, we've got to wrap this up. Hung, Richard,
Thank you for having
it was
us.
great having you. Remember
It was
the
fun.
names: Hung Nguyen, 67th District; Richard Cabellos, 50th District.
Thank you.
Jim and John, not running, but we have an exciting second half planned for you, talking about corruption in local government. So don't go away. We'll be back in just a minute. Stay tuned.
September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for. Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger when we are united.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for. One nation,
Under God.
Indivisible,
with liberty.
and justice.
For all.
In America, there's either room for everyone, or it's not America.
Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
Stop the hate.
You'd never know it on the battlefield. But nearly half of today's military are National Guard and reservists. However, they can't answer our nation's call without their employer's support. If you're an employer, visit esgr.org and find out how to do your part. After all, their response depends on yours.
This is Mommy's bed. Me and Jenny were jumping on it. Mommy's gun fell on the floor. I was a cowboy. Bang, 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 bang. I said, Jenny, wake up, it's just pretend. But she wouldn't wake up.
I am sick of this. I'm sick of dealing with you. I'm sick of.
I work 6 days a week.
Who
do you think you are?
Don't you ever talk back to me again! You just shut up!
What are you crying about?
What a child learns about violence, a child learns for life. Teach carefully. We can show you how. Act Against Violence. Call 877-ACT-WISE for a free brochure.
Sweetheart, smoke outside now. You promise. Okay. Sweetheart, smoke outside now. You promise.
I'm a father. I help you. My father was a father, and he smoked his brains out in the house. Watch as he blows those smoke rings on my little red face. You probably have asthma. Asthma? Schmasma. I'm telling you, nothing's gonna happen to your kids.
Don't swear when you're lying. You know very well that thousands of kids get bronchitis, ear infections, and even pneumonia from their parents' cigarette smoke. And didn't you promise your little angels you'd smoke outside?
Hey, Daddy. Hi, Dad.
Those little devils are just so sweet.
Do the right thing.
Please, smoke outside.
Until you can stop, go out for your kids.
Take the pledge. Call 1-800-513-1157.
As time flows on, there are places we return to again and again. Precious places. Timeless places. Places that, with your help, can endure forever. I'm Paul Newman. Help the Nature Conservancy save the last great places around the world.
All right, welcome back to the Road 2, and we have a new guest joining us, Stevens Miller. He's a local attorney practicing in Virginia. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Stevens.
Well, thanks, Marlene. I am coming out of my specialized practice. I don't typically represent members of the public, but a former staff aide to a current member of Loudoun County Board of Supervisors, the supervisor being Eugene Delgadio. Former staff aide Donna Mateer wanted some counsel on what it would mean for her to go public with what she had learned while working for Supervisor Delgadio, so I'm her lawyer.
Okay, and welcome. You've been on the program before.
Yeah, different capacity.
Yeah, and I should mention a couple of things I'd like to disclose before we start conversation. We did invite Supervisor Delgadio, his attorney, Mr. King, and members of the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors to be on the show today to personally present their side of the story. The supervisor declined, his attorney declined, and a couple of the board members did answer us. They weren't able to make it, and we didn't hear from the others. Not that this is particularly they're associated with it, but it's not
their home court advantage.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Donna Mateer doesn't have a lot of home court advantage.
The second thing I'd like to disclose is that my husband, who is a co-producer of this program, Tony Barney, has filed to run against Eugene Delgadio for Sterling Supervisor in the 2015 election.
If Delgadio's still in office.
If he's still in office at that time, right. There is an effort right now on board for recalling him, but we'll also discuss that. So without further ado, let's get into the background of what happened with Supervisor Delgadio and the special grand jury. And Stevens, I'd like you to maybe kind of sum up.
I'll try to be objective. Remember, I represent an interested party, but all this began when Donna Mateer was fired by Supervisor Delgadio, and she went to county agencies. She was a staff aide answering directly to Mr. Delgadio. She went to the County Human Resources Department because she felt that there were activities going on in his office that might not be proper. They informed her that they don't really extend any protection or help to staff aides because they are hired and fired and work directly for elected members of the government, so they have a unique and unfortunately very vulnerable position. She then took her concerns to Chairman York, who did nothing effective. There was some delay, and ultimately she took her story to the Washington Post, and that became public knowledge at that point. A special grand jury was subsequently convened at the request of the Commonwealth's attorney. He is a Republican, as are all members of the county board, and so he suggested that the case be referred to a different prosecutor to avoid conflict of interest. Special grand jury chose not to indict. That prosecutor did not ask them to consider an indictment. They're not sure why. They expressed their concerns and their speculations in a rather lengthy, detailed report. And that report lays out conclusions indicating a number of acts of potential misconduct, none of which are necessarily criminal, by Mr. Delgadio. The Board of Supervisors subsequently held a meeting where they voted to censure Mr. Delgadio on the strength of that report, and also to take away most of his office funding, since apparently they were convinced he wasn't using it for a legitimate purpose anyway. And they told him he could no longer have a staff aide. And he needed any funding, he would have to go to them and ask for it on an expenditure by expenditure basis, except for apparently paper clips and phones. And so subsequently, his attorney, Mr. King, who I have a pretty good relationship with, went to the court and asked that he be allowed to subpoena some records from the other supervisors, and he wanted the court to order that a more full hearing in the manner of what was done with past Supervisor Whitener back in the 90s when a vaguely similar circumstance arose, that a more formal and full hearing with the admission of testimony and the swearing of witnesses be allowed. And the court dismissed that on a separation of powers argument, saying the board is allowed to discipline its members, et sees fit, and the judiciary can't get involved. I spoke with him briefly recently. He says he's not done with that. He will probably make some effort to appeal it. That's where we're at.
That'll be frivolous.
And I've actually talked to some people that think that it's going to be reversed and
I don't think so.
overturned.
Not for a minute.
Here's the problem, and you guys are attorneys, and you just recounted what the charges that were made. It sounds like you had an employee who didn't have any problem with what Supervisor Delgadio was asking her to do until after she left her job, and then all of a sudden she had some concerns that may or may not be accurate.
It's not.
Well, here's the problem. The legal system got involved and determined that not only could they not convict him of anything in a court of law,
I don't
they
believe
couldn't
that.
even.
I don't believe that.
You don't, and you guys are
I read
lawyers.
the evidence.
Hold on,
I read the evidence.
You guys
I
are
read the
lawyers.
evidence.
You know how
she
it
had
works.
a runaway grand jury.
You know how
she
it
had a
works.
runaway grand jury that said, "You're not indicting. We want a report," and she was compelled by that grand jury to write all of the bad things that they learned.
So we've heard it here first. Everybody charged with a crime in America is guilty.
No.
Is what you're saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
And by the way, keep in mind,
what I'm saying,
I'm sorry.
is that there's a
outnumbered.
political
Here's
class
my
that
opponent.
protects itself,
Guys,
and that's what's happened
and
here.
this would be
and
an
the
example.
citizens have only two courses to get even, and one
Here
is
you
a
go.
removal, and
John,
the other is the election, and that's what's going to happen.
I like it. You're a fine guy, but here might be the reason why Supervisor Delgadio and his attorney did not want to attend, because remember, everybody here wants to remove Eugene.
These poor guys couldn't argue with us.
Want to remove Eugene. And here's the thing.
Eugene,
not only, hold on. Let me finish.
Eugene won't answer any questions.
Let me finish
Why
what
not?
I'm saying. Not
Why
only
not?
was he wasn't convicted of anything, and he wasn't even charged with anything. They couldn't even bring a charge. So
the Commonwealth attorney in Loudoun County,
what does that mean? He is, what's the word? Innocent. Until proven guilty.
People believe that.
Okay.
That he's innocent.
Then that's
the
all I
board
got.
of supervisors believe that he committed misconduct.
Part of the problem. Part of the problem with
because there was no evidence of anything wrong.
It's all about Mr. Delgado.
That's why he was
wasn't he charged?
Let's not have
He will be charged, I believe.
We have a victim.
Then get back to me. Get back to me then.
We have a victim here. Ms. Matera is the one who's
Yes.
had a chance to be heard
The
from.
justice system, evidently, because we're now ignoring
She wants
it.
a chance to answer questions herself. And when I went to the Board of Supervisors at the meeting, when they voted to censure your friend, Mr. Delgadio, I made the specific point that they only produced the document that alleged the charges warranting censure about 36 hours before. And they have consistently refused to allow Donna Matera to come into that boardroom, answer questions, including from Mr. Delgadio, and prove that she can make her case stick.
As lawyers, you're her attorney. The justice system looked into her complaint and didn't even bring a charge. What do you say to that?
I say there's a lot more bargain. That's what I say.
John,
he's the attorney.
You get the charge.
I'm a citizen in the county, and I have every right to
the answer
express
to your
an opinion
question
about
is
it.
a special grand jury only looks at allegations of criminal misconduct. There's a much broader range that Donna can speak to about things that went wrong. That's the sort of thing she wants to talk to the Board of Supervisors.
You'll be suing Eugene, or you'll be...
here's
the problem.
Donna's not looking to bring a lawsuit. Donna wants to tell her story to the public.
There's no proof of
No,
any
because she's
wrongdoing.
only interested in letting people know the truth that they still don't know.
Without having to
Your
go
friends
under
on that
oath.
board swept under the rug by having this fake set of allegations that no one really had a chance to study, so they could vote a censure without a real hearing and make it look like they had done something meaningful when really they just got rid of it.
But in this country, when the justice system gets involved and they can't even bring charges against somebody, whether we like that person or not, whether we believe they're guilty or not, aren't we all supposed to have a presumption of innocence?
These two prosecutors, if you stole a hairnet, would be prosecuting you for a petty larceny. They didn't, which is different than couldn't. They could have.
I believe
Then why didn't they?
Mr. Miller said that the jury failed to indict or wasn't even given the opportunity.
They was given no opportunity.
Failure to indict means innocent.
No, they didn't get
legally innocent.
This is the new Republican mantra. If no crimes were committed, then no wrong was done.
Bill Clinton. I seem to recall the whole Bill Clinton impeachment.
Oh, I see. Talk about Mr. Clinton.
Bill Clinton.
No, because
we should impeach and censure Delgadio, right?
Eugene, unlike President Clinton lied to a grand jury. President Clinton lost his law license.
Refused to give testimony.
Eugene Delgadio was never even charged. And shouldn't we have a little respect for the justice system? He was never
The just
even
us system.
charged.
It is the
I
just
actually
us
don't recall a
system.
conviction of Mr. Clinton for having lied to the grand jury, but
He lost his license.
that's right.
on-
And isn't that interesting?
you know what?
That's an
You're- I'll bet
action.
You're
That's
right.
an
It was
action
the,
of punishment for a non-criminal act
it
of
was the
misconduct.
bar. It was
and
the
that is
bar that did that.
That is
Sorry.
precisely the stage we are at with Mr. Delgadio. Non-criminal misconduct continues to warrant investigation and appropriate punishment. And the problem is they won't investigate. The other 8 Republicans have circled the wagons around this guy, swept it under the rug, and done away with it. Before Donna has had a
And the
chance to
Republican
present
Party
it.
Hold on,
celebrates
let me go
it.
back. Let me go back to my Clinton point, though. Here's the thing.
you love it.
Yeah.
No. The reason is
how about Clinton?
at the end
be
of the
Abraham Lincoln
day.
in a minute.
At the end of the day,
Let's talk about Cuccinelli instead.
At the end of the day, Bill Clinton was not convicted, and thus we are all expected to say he was not convicted. We move on. So what I'm
Cuccinelli
saying
hasn't been
is,
convicted.
in the same
Our governor
spirit,
hasn't been
in the
indicted.
same spirit of the justice system that we all believe in, is
No, we don't all
Eugene
believe in it.
Delgadio.
No, you're wrong.
Sure you do.
No,
You're
I do
supposed
not.
to.
No, I do not.
I have
Lawyers
an
exist.
argument.
No, I'll tell you what.
In the
Lawyers
same-
Lawyers exist to give the system a habit of justice, which it's lost its way.
Lawyers exist
And-
to yell at me
and-
on this show, but
You can yell back.
I can. But here's the thing: Bill Clinton was not convicted. We move on. Eugene Delgadio was not charged.
Mr.
We
Connolly,
move
do you
on.
realize that what I'm asking the board to do is absolutely consistent with what Mr. King and Mr. Delgadio are asking the board to do?
But that's
On
different than
this
the legal
point,
system.
You're
Legal
right.
system.
That's right. I am looking for an opportunity to see the board do its job and bring to full light and full visibility of the public everything Donna has
All
to
the
say.
stuff that wasn't legally, that he couldn't
There's
do anything
more.
with legally.
There's more to misconduct than a crime. Anybody who seems to believe that if it's not criminal, it's not wrong, shouldn't be opposed to, I don't know, freedom of choice
If
with
you just
abortion.
want to throw charges at somebody, we have this fine show to do it, and you can buy it
Then
at
why
the
does Mr.
newspaper. You
Delgadio
can
want
hand
that
out
hearing?
flyers.
Then why does Mr. Delgadio want that hearing?
And why won't he ever give a public statement giving his explanation?
Well,
Because he doesn't
I'm
have
not
one.
Supervisor Delgadio's lawyer,
I've
but
spoken to him.
Do you think that he's
He wants
deprived
that
of due
hearing.
process?
No, I think he got due process.
You do think
and
he disagrees with you.
No.
I agree with you.
Hold on, I'm not saying I don't know about the board, but as far as the legal system, he did get due process, and they couldn't even charge him with a crime.
Well,
so
we're
that,
talking
my
about-
friends, is
So why did they write a report?
Non-criminal
How often
misconduct.
have you seen a grand jury report in your entire
Do you
life?
feel that?
if you write a report saying it's kind of like at the very end of no matter what it said in the report, there was evidently nothing legal. He didn't. The courts looked at it. There was nothing illegal that he did.
No, the courts did not look at it.
Charge.
The courts did not look at it.
The prosecutor, as an officer of the court, come on.
The
you know
prosecutor, as a quote officer of the court, never gave them a chance to vote on anything, and they demanded, I bet.
If you were defending a client and the situation were reversed, you would be on a soapbox proclaiming the innocence of your
No,
client.
I wouldn't be able to. I would have kept my mouth shut after that report.
Well, then you would have.
That would have been 5%.
You would know it. You're
I
a
would have
fine
kept my
lawyer.
mouth shut
You are a
off.
fine lawyer, and you would not have done that because you would have known your
I'll tell you what,
responsibility to the
if
system.
I had been his lawyer, he would have done two things. One, he would have returned the money that he stole from the county by paying somebody to do his job rather than county business. Two,
They all
he would
looked
have
into it.
apologized. Then
Right.
we would have sat there and waited to see if that
Had
was enough.
he done
and if it
that-
was not enough, he would have resigned
Had-
rather than give his testimony
had
under
he-
oath to anybody.
Had he
That's
done,
what I would have done as
had
a lawyer.
he done that, don't you think they would have charged him with a crime? They
You wanted
didn't.
to-
They didn't, did they?
We do not have. Do we have
Presumption of innocence,
politicians
right?
of character without regard to party or ideology, or do we have just ambitious SOBs who'll do whatever they can to stay in office, no matter how shameful their conduct?
Well, we have lots of politicians.
That's
and
right,
A much
and we should
bigger
be running them out of
show.
the system.
It's a
And we
much
should be
bigger
running
show.
them out
but
of the
don't we
system.
still have a presumption of innocence?
That has nothing to do with the political.
Because there are
office
plenty of people
holder.
I think are guilty, but
And
what am I
You
going to do
can't have
about
it
it?
both ways.
That's
You
strictly
can't be a
applicable
political
to
office
criminal
holder.
misconduct, and I don't understand why you seem to think that
You're
Mr.
char- you're-
Delgadio should not be getting the hearing he's asking
You're-
for.
No, you guys
He
are
wants
accusing
this.
him of criminal activities. If
No,
they
no,
weren't-
no.
If they
You're not
weren't
listening to me.
criminal,
You're doing a
they
lot of
weren't
talking, but you're not listening, Jim. We're talking about misconduct beyond what is criminal. We're talking about misuse of authority, violation of county policy,
That's a-
harassment in the workplace, mistreatment of his employees, misuse of county
None of
funds,
those things are illegal?
misrepresenting what he's doing. doing. I don't know, and I don't care whether they're specifically criminal. What I
just
care
wanna
about
talk
is the
about
board.
them.
No, I want the board to do what it did to one of its own in the 1990s when Stephen Whitener was accused of misconduct of a specifically non-criminal nature. The board held a formal hearing, convened an ad hoc ethics committee, gave him a chance to present his own case, witnesses if he wanted to, and despite what two supervisors said at the most recent meeting, they do have the power to call witnesses. They can ask a court to issue a subpoena. They can put witnesses under oath. They can have a full and open hearing exactly like Mr. Delgadio and his lawyer want him to have. And that's what Donna wants him to have. Oddly enough, she and I and his lawyer and he agree on this. You seem to be the one who doesn't want the public to hear what Mr. Delgadio wants them to hear.
First of all, let me make it clear, I am specifically referring to the legal process. What the Board of Supervisors...
We're done with that.
Hold it. We all know... No, we're done with that because you don't like the answer.
No, I accept the answer. You're right, I don't like it, but I don't argue with it.
And had you gotten what you wanted from the justice system that looked into what Supervisor Delgadio did and could not find fault with it, they
they said so.
They found plenty.
Regardless,
They did not indict. Now there is time for a hearing to determine if there is no
Board of Supervisors.
The Board of Supervisors that has its own internal politics.
And you're fine with their censure.
Unfortunately, Republicans fighting among, and not just because they're Republicans, but in this case, you have a lot of Republicans fighting against each other for reasons that, in some cases, that have nothing at all to do with the matters at hand. So I'm not entirely sure that
members of the Board of Supervisors censured this guy for conduct almost entirely based on the criticisms in the grand jury report. Were they wrong or right?
The issue about the office staff, whether he can hire his own office staff, and the budget stuff, that was a narrower vote, and it doesn't sound like that had a lot to do. And the county Republican Party is poised to pass a resolution asking the supervisors to reconsider what they did to Supervisor Delgadio. So they view it. They by and large view it as some supervisors being upset with Supervisor Delgadio for things unrelated to this particular issue.
Well, none of them said that, so you read their mind.
I'm talking about the local Republican Party. A lot of the members there believe that they are going to be passing a resolution most likely at the next meeting.
They have no basis in fact for their belief system that you talk about.
They have as much basis as you guys do.
No, because we have evidence.
The justice
we have
system.
evidence.
Evidence that the courts would not looked at.
No, the court sanctioned a report that reported misconduct.
Acting as an
officer. So you don't think it'll be overturned?
A Democratic prosecutor, I believe, right? A Democratic prosecutor looked at it?
You know, I'm representing a Republican, and she wants a Republican board to let her tell her story. Why won't you let them do that?
So I guess that's a yes. A Democratic prosecutor looked at it.
She's a prosecutor in the political class.
Which means it would have been even more to her advantage to indict Eugene.
No,
well, that's reflective of the way you might think how prosecutors work.
Well, you guys are just salivating at jumping on Eugene. I imagine
I'm not
a Democratic
salivating on it. I think that every person, Republican or Democrat, is unpatriotic if they will suffer corruption in silence, whether it be in the governor's office, in the attorney general's office, or at the local board of supervisors. Which means if there's corruption,
the court system should investigate, should indict, and should convict if there is corruption.
The court system receives its funds from the board of supervisors.
So you believe that the Commonwealth's attorney was at fault?
I believe the Commonwealth attorney referred it to a friend who had already expressed an opinion that there was nothing there and came in and expressed the same opinion. The grand jury didn't like that, had heard the testimony and said, this doesn't stand with us. And she reluctantly prepared a report with a runaway grand jury.
So I'm defending the Democratic prosecutor? You're defending a Republican disgruntled employee, and I'm defending a disgruntled Democratic prosecutor?
You sit here in the first half of the show telling me government is broken. Now you sit here in the second half of the show and you say government is fine. You should make a choice here.
There are a lot of things broken in government, but we still have to follow the rules.
The justice system does not work for the common person. The citizens are victims of this supervisor without regard to his party, without regard to what supervisors think. And it is based on misconduct that citizens identified in the face of and in contradiction of a prosecutor who wouldn't ask them to vote.
We don't have to follow any of the rules then.
That's not what I said.
I'm
saying there are
rules to follow. The justice system, forget what the justice system did, forget what the prosecutor did. Who cares?
The justice system is censure, and the next step on the justice system is to remove him from office with a statutory process that provides for it. And if that doesn't work, then at the ballot box we kick him out of office. And if the Republican Party wasn't so shameful in the Loudoun County sector, it would not approve this misconduct itself.
So
the fact that it does says more about the party than it does about Delgadio.
Somehow got a Democratic prosecutor to refuse to even charge.
And it got 8 members of the board who were all Republicans to censure this same person.
I don't know
what is that about?
I don't know if I can compete with that conspiracy theory.
It's not a conspiracy theory. You think the 8 Republicans are conspiring with Democrats to punish when a Democratic prosecutor
you seem to think that they're conspiring with a Democratic prosecutor to let him off the hook because she let him off the hook.
She let him off the hook, meaning she had all of these bases in crime that she could consider. None of them she considered. She never gave him a chance to vote because she didn't want to indict him.
Because she didn't believe there was a case.
Wasn't there a technicality there, though? That
there was
the law
I don't agree with the technicality. I'm a lawyer. I've been a real prosecutor. I prosecuted corruption cases. And she should have presented it to the grand jury.
As a former prosecutor, wouldn't you be insulted if talking heads got on the show? And they have talking heads have a right to.
No.
But talking heads get on the show and second guess every single decision you made.
I have written reports on prosecutors who prosecuted the wrong people and didn't prosecute other people for the U.S. Senate and for the House of Representatives.
I want to hear from our guest here. Okay, this is the reason he's on. Do you think that Delgadio was deprived of due process? Do you think your client was deprived?
I don't represent Ms. Delgadio. His lawyer was invited and couldn't come. I represent Donna Mateer, who is getting really tired of people who haven't heard her story characterize her the way you just did.
How did I
You called her a disgruntled former employee. You don't know anything about her. You've done a lot of talking. Give me a chance to speak for Donna Mateer.
When did she bring up her complaint? After she was fired?
Before.
She didn't go to anybody with
Yes, she did. She went to a coworker and said, I'm not sure what we're doing is legal. What do you think?
And what did she do? Continue to do
you know
what
what?
she
You
did.
know what? If you're interested in the answers to those questions, then you should be on my side, going to the Board of Supervisors, telling them, reconsider, reconvene, do what you did for Whitener, have a hearing, let Donna come in, and she can be cross-examined by Charlie King and get the answers to all your questions. But we're not going to do it by a remote controller at a distance until...
Well, we didn't.
And we don't
remember?
Have to. No, in the Whitener case,
prosecutor.
we didn't.
We had a prosecutor.
No. You keep trying to drag this back to a criminal question. I'm talking about policy and non-criminal misconduct.
You're talking about politics.
Just like Whitener.
You're talking about politics.
No, I'm talking about things like how that happened.
We're talking about we can't charge him in a court of law, so let's charge him in the court of public
law. So I'm a little confused.
I kind of thought a lot of Democrats and Republicans were against that.
The victim here is not a member of the Board of Supervisors. She's asking for somebody somewhere to give her a chance to show her full story with Stan's cross-examination.
Did she not give her story to the Democratic prosecutor who declined to indict?
On criminal questions only, there is misconduct.
So the political questions can come.
That's why we have a civil court system. That's why we have policy statements. That's why we have HR rules.
Are you going to the civil court system?
We are trying to go to the Board of Supervisors and get them to do their job, which is what Mr. Delgadio wants. Only people like you who don't seem to want to hear what Donna's actually got to say stand on this notion that the special grand jury heard everything and therefore there is nothing further.
I just assumed the Democratic prosecutor did it for me.
But you're very comfortable calling her names like disgruntled former employee.
That's not a name. That is actually a definition. She was an employee. She no longer was an employee. After she was no longer an employee, she then went to the prosecutor.
Here we have the Republican fact-finding method.
I'm sorry. Where in that chain? Where in that chain was I incorrect?
Factory.
In ignoring what she had to say.
But the Democratic prosecutor presumably listened to what she had to say.
Not everything she's got to tell the public, not everything she's got to tell the government. There's more to misconduct.
They kind of only listen to the stuff that's
In
illegal.
fact, I can tell you, no, criminal. There's a big difference. And this isn't too complex
you're
even for you.
admitting he didn't do anything in criminal.
I don't know.
Well, meantime, there's a recall effort that's ongoing, and what are the chances of recall? I'm a little confused about the Virginia law on recall.
Well, let me take that for a second because it's important to distinguish between recall and removal. Some jurisdictions have recall that results in following a petition process, a fresh election. In a county in Virginia, you have a removal process. A petition then goes to a judge who then has essentially the power to convene a trial. And if certain non-criminal statutory conditions are met and the jury or judge finds them to have been proven, then he can order the removal of that elected official. The case is prosecuted again by a Commonwealth's attorney. I have to share some of the concerns Mr. Flannery has. I think at this point the people have a reason to doubt they really get good representation through that mechanism.
I think that's a fair summary.
And I think the residents of Sterling are not going to get good representation no matter which way you look, because right now Supervisor Delgadio is not serving on any committees. His budget is frozen or managed by other people that aren't in Sterling.
That
so-
would be my
That may be
instinct.
changed, that may be changed back.
That would be my instinct if he was a good representative. But Donna Mateer's charges, as well as others, was that he had such animus for other supervisors and for staff and for citizens calling, telling them not to do any of those things, that they're more likely to get better representation without him in office. And Chairman Scott York said, as he had represented that area himself and felt particularly concerned about it, that he was going to pay special attention to their needs and that any citizen who calls will get a response. And he sent a letter to everybody in the district describing what the board had done, including the censure, and reassuring them that whatever funds they needed and so forth would be taken care of. But a trusted agent for their interest was not Mr. Delgadio. So I think the district is better by the fact of this insulation. And members of the board, when they were voting on this, said, I am not going to be held responsible for the truth or accuracy of a representation he makes for any funding.
We have about 30 seconds left, so we're obviously not going to solve this today, but do you think, real quickly, should the law be changed?
I don't think there's, I think there's adequate law to deal with this case, and it wasn't invoked.
How about you? You think the law should be reformed in Virginia?
I think there are options that a responsible Board of Supervisors has available under existing law to let the full story come before the public, and they should use them.
Okay.
So to wrap it up, there's a political arena and there's a legal arena. If you guys want to go after Eugene in a legal arena, that is your right. Go do what you're going to do as Democrats or whatever. You run someone against Eugene, fight Eugene in the political arena. But in the legal arena spoke, and the legal arena did not even charge him. And I think that regardless of whether you agree or disagree, we need to consider that.
We're out of time. You got the last word this time, Jim. Okay, well, thank you for watching. We'll be back soon. Take care. Go out and vote November 5th.
Always something to get